Hello, DIY Dad here. Right, I'm going on a little bit of a side quest today. My channel is mostly about trying to help people and home educating families learn DIY and life skills. On my channel, I'm also looking at I'm basically showing everybody how we're leaving the UK. We're taking the kids away and we're going to go abroad because of the way the UK is. Therefore, I thought I'd start a little side quest, because I do things like this all the time, about things that I've seen in the UK, which is just pure insanity. There's just more and more stuff in the UK that I'm seeing that's just weird. And people are just like, yeah, it's fine, just how it is. No, we should be saying, no, I'm not having that. But that isn't happening. Today, I thought the first thing to talk about is the NHS. I'll tell you a story about my daughter in a minute and her teeth. And it's not a good story really. It's just it condemns the system. It's just the whole thing doesn't work anymore. So the NHS, outwardly from the NHS, everybody that comes into the country or anybody looking outwardly in, they see the NHS as this fantastic institution that was brought in, and when it first came out, it was sort of groundbreaking because no one else had anything like that at the time. And yes, it worked brilliantly when there wasn't many people around. But more recently, it's just got worse and worse and more disorganised. It's costing a fortune to be really, really poor service. And now it's getting to the point where, I worked in forestry, and someone had an accident on one of the sites we were on, and it was going to be 40 minutes for an ambulance to get to them. 40 minutes. So we bundled them in the car, bang, took them straight to the hospital. So it's getting to the point where there's no ambulances that are available for people. And yet, I saw Trump going up to Scotland after flying into the UK, and there was like 3 or 4 ambulances in his convoy. Why the hell were they there? We're paying for that. Those ambulances could be out, saving people that are desperately needing an ambulance. But no, they're in Trump's little convoy because just in case something happens to him, as if there wasn't enough vehicles. There's about 20 vehicles in that convoy. So things like that. So NHS, it's getting worse and worse, and every government that comes along says we'll give more money to the NHS. It doesn't help. It just absorbs all of that money into its chaotic, disorganised, whatever it is. It's just a mess. Too many managers, too many outdated practices. Nothing works. So if you ring up for a doctor now, you can't even speak to a doctor on the phone anymore. You speak to a receptionist, and you have a chat to the receptionist. She goes, "Oh yeah, I know the way it is. I don't agree with any of this either. Can I speak to a doctor?" Sorry, you can't. And it's like a month or 2 months you have to book to speak to a doctor on the phone, like months in advance. And what this is causing massive problems, because there's people was like, "Oh yeah, I've got a bit of an issue. I better get that seen before it becomes a bigger issue." So they ring up and then they get told you can't see a doctor for 6-7 months. And by the time they actually get to see a doctor, that little problem has now become a bigger problem, to the point where they've been to A&E twice and they're starting to queue in there for 6 hours or whatever it is. And so then, it all snowballs. So then the person that was quite healthy with a minor problem is now starting to become critical and needs to go to the front of the list. And they're blocking up A&E every time they go there. And it's just snowballing, people becoming more and more ill. And doctors are now just signposters. You go there and you say, "Oh, I've got this issue," and they signpost you to another department. And then you have to fill out 16 different forms for this department and do that. It's pointless. It's absolutely pointless. An example, let's talk about ADHD. There's been a massive explosion in ADHD diagnosis. Now, I don't believe that it's actually got worse. What I believe is that the modern world has now become so chaotic. You get all this information. People are overworked, they're underpaid, they're stressed, and this stress is kind of causing the symptoms of more ADHD symptoms to appear. It's not that they were never there, it's that the world has become such a chaotic and it's just a stressful place to live. So people are now in a situation where they can't cope. So then doctors are saying, oh, it's not ADHD, it's just something else, it's caused by this, this and this. But ADHD is actually a gene that... oh, there's a cat down there, it's just come to see me. It's just resident in the... I can't say the word. In, like, Stone Age man. Neanderthals. And basically, it's a gene that's designed to keep you alive. So the fight, flight, creating things, building things, watching for dangers. It's actually, a part of us. It's the part of us that allowed us to become hunter-gatherers and survive. And now it's completely at odds with the modern world, where people can't do anything for themselves. People are struggling to... They can't do any DIY. They can't fix their own cars. Literally, if they want something done, they phone somebody else up to do it for them. And it's, in my eyes, that's just not on. You can just... How do people live without knowing how to do their own stuff? I just don't get it. I employ people to do things like main jobs, roofing, major things like that I don't have the equipment to do. But everything else, I do everything myself. So we've become this society where, there's a person that does a specific thing. And all of these people are really busy because there's not many of them. Plumbers, electricians, general builders, mechanics. Have you tried to get your car into a garage recently? No one wants to be a mechanic. The wages are quite big, but no one wants to do it. I don't know if it's laziness or I just don't know. I've got a local garage down the road, and I said, when I was working, I don't really have time to. I can do the camp out on my van, but I don't have the time. Literally, it's a time issue. I need to spend some time with my kids as well as being at work. I don't have enough time. The modern way, there is no time. And he was like, well, I don't really want to do this because, I know you can do it yourself. I tell you what, I'll do it yourself. It'd be much better. And every time I go there, you get the same stories. I've given up. It's pointless. Why? There's absolutely no point me trying to get somebody else to do a job for me. It just doesn't seem to happen. They just don't want any work that's even remotely difficult. They just want easy MOTs, things like that. So, right. So let's move on from that. So the modern world is very, very stressful. There's too much advertising. We're getting bombarded daily by everything that you look at as an advert. Like, for example, YouTube. The adverts on YouTube, unless you're a premium, there's millions of adverts every sort of couple of minutes. It drives you nuts. It's worth paying the $12.99 to not have that. Look at the billboards. You go to the cinema, there's like 20 minutes of adverts. Radio advertising, Facebook advertising. Your phone's listening to you constantly, talking. It's listen to every single thing you say. I bought some cider the other week. I'd never bought this brand of cider before. I bought it at a garage. And then the same night, an advert for that cider came up on Facebook. So what's it doing? They are targeting people through advertising by looking at what you buy in that short amount of time. So anything you buy somehow goes through the system and they can advertise to you in the same evening, the same thing again. And you're just like, wow, that's like a massive invasion of privacy, is it not? But that's the modern way. If they can advertise to you, they will. Another one, we had a Domino's the other night, which I don't really like, to be honest. And it was insane. The price was insane to start with, but then I ticked on the please don't send me any advertising or emails, and I still got emails over it about this. This is I'm struggling to find the word for it. It was just basically they wanted feedback on what it was like. But I've had 3 mails. I asked for that, specifically ticked that, and made doubly sure that I didn't get that, and I still got it. So, yeah. Right, so back to the NHS. My daughter, Jasmine, she's got a lot of her adult teeth at the back now. And she's still got a lot of her baby teeth. Her baby teeth, perfect condition. Unfortunately, two of her molars at the back have got faults in them when they grew, and they're literally a couple of years old, and one's got a big hole in it, the other one's got the whole top missing now, and it's not her fault. It's literally there's faults in the teeth. So we went to the dentist. He saw this, went, oh, okay, well, we'll let me just poke around in here, have a look, and got this little pointy hook thing that they use, and poked her in the hole, and then she went, ugh. Brilliant. So then the next 3 times we went, we couldn't get her to even open her mouth. You know, it was so stressful for her. Really felt for her, and there's nothing we could do particularly. And in terms of referral, it was like, well, we'll have to be referred to be sedated to the local hospital. Okay, that's fine. We'll do that because this is obviously going to be a massive issue just having these holes filled. So then 9 months down the line, we're still waiting for this referral. So we think, oh well, we'll try the private route. So we go to like a holistic dentist, and get an online consultation, which told us a load of information, extra stuff, and we were like, oh Jesus, I didn't know that there was all this other stuff that we needed to know, because the NHS dentist hadn't mentioned any of it at all. So we got dumped with all this information about mouth breathing. She's a mouth breather. Autistic or ADHD can have this gene called MTHFR, which if you have gas and air can deplete your body of B12. Didn't know about that. So it opened all these questions up, and he basically said, yeah, you need to go and see, you're going to have to get a specialist, and you need to get a teeth sorted, you need to find an autistic or an ADHD friendly dentist. So I then spent about a week phoning everybody I could find in the UK that was related to this, and found that you can't, nobody will use like proper sedation on a child under 12 in the UK. It has to be gas and air, or you go to the hospital. And I did find one lady dentist that actually hired out hospitals specifically for this reason, but it was going to be £4,000 per tooth, and I was like, so that's going to be £8,000. I was like, Jesus, we can't afford £8,000. So that kind of got shelved. That was, and the same feedback was everywhere. You can use certain amounts of painkillers and things, but you can only use certain things. So it's basically gas and air or nothing with children under 12. So we went back to our dentist, explained the situation, had a letter from our private consultation. It didn't get us anywhere. So basically, our NHS dentist spoke to the hospital and said, "Oh, is there anything you can do?" And the answer is no, because there's even people that are actually in tooth pain, constant tooth pain, and they're not being seen either. And I was like, how can that be? That's not on in this day and age. So the doctor got involved. We actually got we got the letter, this letter sent to the doctor as well, because the doctor seemed to get involved in referrals. So we spent all this time writing an email and trying to giving them the information, and none of the different parts of the NHS speak to each other. Nobody's got a clue what's going on. The doctor, you can't speak to them. The receptionist sort of like changes every couple of weeks. You have no idea. You never speak to the same person, and they're separate to the There's 2 different dental sections you speak to, and none of them have any idea what's going on. And then when you actually speak to ours is Carlisle Dental Centre, you speak to them, and they struggle even to find the person on the list that you're talking about. It's just none of these systems work. So the doctor basically sent me a text message. I wasn't even the one that sent the information. It was my wife that had done it. But I got a text message, and it just said, basically, piss off, we can't help you. We're not dentists. And yet, when you have a massive dental problem, the doctors refer you to the dentists. So there's like 5 or 6 different ways to be referred to a dentist, none of which work. So we've been on the waiting list now for 9 months for the hospital appointment, and we've just given up. So, and something else. About 3 weeks ago, when we were talking to our normal dentist, our NHS dentist, they mentioned that, if you decide to go over to the west coast of Cumbria instead of staying at Carlisle, oh, you get seen much quicker. Why would they not offer that to start with? They'd say, oh, by the way, I know you're going to be in this long queue, go to the shorter one. No, didn't offer that at all. Again, depends on who you speak to and who's with it at the time. The system just doesn't work. None of it works. So what the hell are we all paying for? It's pointless. It's absolutely pointless. So in the end, we've gone private. I've got a friend that's a dental nurse, and she recommended... I'd spent ages ringing around, and we actually recommended a dentist in Carlisle in the end, and we've actually been there today. And it was a fantastic experience. It really was. My daughter, we did some role-playing last night about me being a dentist, and we made it all funny and entertaining. And we went there today, and she went in, and she was obviously nervous, but the environment was better. She was much happier in there. You could just tell. And the dentist was calm with her and speaking to her so she understood, and said, "Oh, I'm going to put this tool in your mouth and use this and use this." And we were able to speak to her and say, don't use the pointy thing, that kind of stuff. And it worked brilliant. She opened her mouth straight away, and she had the consultation perfectly. So the upshot of that is, after 3 trips to an NHS dentist, she wouldn't even open her mouth. 1 trip to the private one, yes. Good stuff. Well done. So we're now in a situation where one of her teeth are that bad because we've been waiting for that long. It's not her fault, by the way. That one of them's probably going to have to get taken out. That's how it is. That's fine. But it shouldn't have taken this amount of time to get to this point. And it's just insanity. So basically, the parts of the NHS that are meant to knit together. So basically, you go to your NHS dentist and say, "Oh, there's a problem here. I'm autistic or ADHD." Oh, they say, "Right, we'll refer you to the Carlisle Dental Centre to get properly knocked out in the hospital to have the work done." Fine, but the list is don't tell you the list is so long that by the time you get there, half your mouth's fallen out. It's just and they wonder why people are in pain in this country now. It's archaic, the system. It really is. So that's really the dentist story, and I've got a similar story as well. When I first moved up here, I ended up with an abscess in my jaw, my 2 front teeth here, and that was purely caused by when I was a kid. I fell over and knocked my 2 teeth, and they went wobbly. And apparently they were dripping into my jaw for God knows how many years, and it flared up. When you have an abscess in your jaw, there's nowhere for the pressure to go. Your jaw just gets bigger and bigger. And at the time, partly my fault. Well, I've just moved up. Couldn't find a dentist. I couldn't get anywhere. And that happened. There was my friendly cat again. Wonderful. So I ended up going to 6 emergency dentists and the doctor again in Cumbria. I've got pushed around from pillar to post until one of them took pity on me. They all x-rayed it and said, "Oh yeah, this is bad. You need this done." None of them would do it because I wasn't registered, even though they're an emergency dentist. So in the end, one of them took pity on me up at Carlisle and actually drilled it and let the pressure out so I could actually sleep after a week. And after that, I just had to go private and get it root canalled. I think it cost about 500 quid. So why bother paying the national insurance if you're going to have to go private anyway? So that's our history of dentists through our family have not been good. And my teeth are good. I've only got basically that 2 root canals and 1 filling, I think, and that's it. I'm coming up to 43. So imagine if you had bad teeth and you needed to see a dentist every so often. Because I think now you see them every 2 years. So that's the state of the NHS at the moment. It's just chaotic. And the dentist we saw today, she used to work for the NHS. And she said, "Yeah, I understand what you're talking about because I used to work there, and I gave up working for NHS because it was so." She described it as chaotic, and that's it. Nothing makes any sense anymore. There's too many people, too many managers, not enough money. But I don't think even if you gave the NHS £50 billion, it would make any difference. It would just get, like I said before, it would get absorbed into the chaos. It just needs to be completely streamlined and made more efficient. And the problem is that if you work for the NHS now, you become so stressed. My wife used to work for the NHS, actually, and she gave it up. people become so stressed that the excuse me, that they leave. They just leave, flat leave. It doesn't matter anymore that, you know, how much you get paid. Well, they don't get paid enough anyway, but they just leave, and then they go and work privately and get paid more in a less stressed environment where it's well organised. So, you know, each government is doing the same thing. We'll give more money to NHS, but they won't reorganise it and actually sort it out. I think it's going to get to a point where it's not savable anymore. I've also got friends and sort of extended family that live in other countries, and they say, oh, for example, Spain, you go and see a doctor. You ring up and go, can I see a doctor, please? Yes, you can see a doctor. That'll be so much money. I mean, it might be like 15 quid or something. Then you go in, you see a doctor, get sorted out, and you leave. Is that not easier? In this country, that's not how it works. You ring up the doctor, and you don't speak to a doctor, you speak to a receptionist, and then they tell you can have an appointment in 7 months' time. It's just, you have to plan to be ill. It's not going to happen, is it? It's just... So anyway, that's the NHS. It's falling to bits, and I can't see any way that it's ever going to recover from the state it's in now. So, unfortunately, that's, you know, disintegrated. The UK is slowly disintegrating, and that's, you know, all of these things combined is why we are leaving. So we'll leave that video there, and this little side quest bit of my channel is going to be, you know, the odd things that are happening, and, you know, why is this happening, and for what reason, and are people just accepting it, like being a frog or a lobster slowly boiling in water. You don't notice it's, you know, getting hotter and hotter because you haven't been plunged straight in. It's just slowly boiling as you're in it, and you don't realise. So we'll leave that there. The NHS, a decrepit mess, I suppose.